Welcome to this explainer. Today I'm taking you through a truly profound lecture given by Bhakti Caru Swami back on April 29, 2010, right at the ISKCON Chowpatty Temple in Mumbai, India. We'll be diving deep into the Srimad Bhagavatam, specifically Canto 8, Chapter 17, text 25 through 28. We're going to analyze this incredible talk, tracing it from an epic ancient story all the way down to a super practical spiritual application for our everyday lives. I'm absolutely thrilled to share this with you, so let's just jump right in.
Here's what we're covering today. First, the story of Lord Vamanadeva. Second, perceiving through spiritual love. Third, cultivating the devotional seed. Fourth, the power of association. And finally, a quick summary of the main points.
Section 1. The story of Lord Vamanadeva, focusing on the surrender of Bali Maharaj.
So this part of the Srimad Bhagavatam actually serves as a prelude to the appearance of Lord Vamanadeva. He essentially arrives to resolve what you might call a cosmic real estate dispute. To get the setup here, we really have to look at Bali Maharaj. Bali had just taken over the heavenly kingdom from Indra, basically feeling it was completely unfair that Indra's side of the family got all the heavenly planets. Naturally, seeing her children wandering around without a home, Indra's mother, Aditi, became incredibly sad. She took a severe vow, fasting and performing intense austerities. Pleased by her devotion, the Supreme Lord agreed to become her son, appearing as Vamanadeva, a beautiful tiny dwarf boy. Now Vamanadeva goes to Bali Maharaj, who is famous for his immense charity, and asks for something that sounds incredibly simple, just 3 steps of land. But Bali's guru, Sukracharya, instantly realizes this is a trick. He warns Bali, saying, "Look, this isn't an ordinary boy, this is Hari, the Supreme Lord, coming to take literally everything from you." Sukracharya even tries to magically block the water pot Bali is using to seal the promise. This leads to Vamanadeva playfully poking the spout with a piece of straw and blinding Sukracharya in one eye. But here is the absolutely incredible takeaway from the Swami's lecture. Despite his guru's desperate warnings, Bali perfectly surrenders all he has. He figured, hey, if the Lord came to take everything, he was entirely prepared to give it.
Moving on to Section 2. Perceiving through spiritual love, seeing beyond the mundane.
You know, what's really fascinating about this story is the underlying philosophical principle. When the Lord appears, how do we actually perceive the divine? Because, let's face it, seeing isn't just about optics, right? It's about consciousness. Bhakti Caru Swami explains this beautifully. He points out that when we walk into a temple and look at a deity on the altar, we often just see a form carved out of stone, wood, clay, or metal. But that is not the real perception of the Supreme Lord. True spiritual vision requires our eyes to become literally anointed with pure love, or prema. When devotion is the basis of our vision, the perception is entirely different. In fact, the Swami notes that when you truly see the Supreme Lord through this lens of pure love, you can experience profound physical ecstatic symptoms. We're talking hair standing on end, trembling, and tears flowing spontaneously from the eyes. That is a whole different level of seeing.
This brilliantly illustrates the contrast in vision, which the Swami highlights by comparing Duryodhana and the Pandavas. Think about this. They both had Lord Krishna standing right in front of them, literally the same person. But was their perception the same? Absolutely not. Duryodhana looked at Krishna and just saw an enemy. He saw this mundane, massive obstacle to his own ambitions and sense gratification. His thought process was basically, man, if only Krishna wasn't here, dealing with the Pandavas would be a breeze. But the Pandavas, they saw him purely through the lens of devotion and love. It perfectly shows us that simply having the divine in front of you isn't enough. You need the right spiritual vision to actually see him.
Section 3. Cultivating the devotional seed, the gardening metaphor of Bhakti.
So the million-dollar question is, if this loving vision is absolutely required, how do we develop it? How do we actually get those eyes anointed with love? Well, it all begins with what the Swami refers to as Bhakti Lata Bija. This translates to the seed of the creeper of devotion. And here is a super fascinating point Bhakti Caru Swami makes, citing the great spiritual teachers. This seed is not simply a product of your own pious activities or good deeds. You can't just earn it by being a quote-unquote good person. No, it is an incredible spiritual fortune that is received only through the mercy of a Vaishnava, a devotee of the Lord. The devotee acts as the catalyst, offering you this precious seed.
From the exact moment you receive that seed, you effectively become a spiritual gardener. I mean, you can't just toss a seed under a bunch of rocks or desert sand and expect it to grow, right? You have to prepare the barren field of your heart, really saturating it with faith to make that soil fertile. Then, you actively water this seed through the daily practices of hearing and chanting. If you follow this process properly, the seed sprouts into a creeper, grows flowers, and eventually bears the ultimate fruit of prema. And that is exactly that spontaneous love we were just talking about.
Now what's mind-blowing is what happens the exact moment this creeper sprouts. The Swami explains that as the seedling emerges, two very specific leaves come out, and honestly, they work absolute miracles. The first leaf is called kala-srotas, and it immediately destroys all your material suffering and distress, just wipes it out. The second leaf is supada, which brings total auspiciousness right into your life. So just the very beginning of true, sincere spiritual practice immediately takes care of your suffering and aligns your entire life with immense positivity. Talk about a real game changer.
All right, Section 4. The Power of Association. Sustaining your spiritual momentum.
Now we all know that cultivating a garden takes serious time and effort, and sometimes gardeners just get tired. We're going to draw some incredible insights here from a Q&A session that happened at the very end of Bhakti Caru Swami's lecture. A listener in the audience asked a highly relatable question. They basically said, okay, we know the philosophy, we know the goal, but this is a lifelong process. What happens when we get tired or just plain lazy? What happens when our spiritual routine begins to feel dangerously monotonous and we start dropping our guard and getting distracted by the world again? It's such a great question, isn't it? Because it hits right at the reality of long-term commitment to anything.
Bhakti Caru Swami's response was sharp and deeply practical. He noted that the single safest path, really our ultimate safety net, is remaining deeply anchored in the association of other devotees. When you start to drift or feel lazy, it's the community that pulls you back. Plus, he explained that Krishna consciousness should literally never feel monotonous. If it feels boring, it just means you've drifted from the active process. When you step out, share this knowledge with others, preach, and serve together, that monotony is instantly replaced by the deep excitement of shared spiritual service. It's the association that keeps the fire burning, for sure.
And that brings us to Section 5, Summary of Main Points, Distilling the Teachings. To wrap up this explainer, I want to clearly summarize the core teachings from Bhakti Caru Swami's phenomenal lecture so you can easily take them with you. Just remember these 4 pillars. First, the fearless surrender of Bali Maharaj, who is willing to give absolutely everything to the Lord. Second, the fundamental necessity of cultivating love to truly perceive the divine, otherwise we're really just looking at stone. Third, you've got to act as a gardener, actively tending to your spiritual seed of devotion with immense faith and daily watering. And finally, whenever the path feels long, stay anchored in the association of devotees. They are your absolute antidote to spiritual monotony. Finally, I want to leave you with this powerful, provocative thought from the Swami's lecture. He noted that today, the modern world is completely obsessed with the art of living. We all want to know how to live comfortably, how to succeed, how to exist here perfectly. But he asks a brilliant question. What is the point of knowing how to live if you do not know how to die? Remaining steadfast in this spiritual devotion actually teaches us the art of dying, how to leave this temporary situation successfully. And that, ultimately, is the true and only path to actual immortality. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep tending to your spiritual garden, stay in good association, and I will see you next time.